But if you look closely, you're going to see a little shoot, a baby plant tucked inside there, waiting to explode, and what we call the hypocotyl and the radical. Okay, and it's been explained there. You see, so there are different types of seeds. You have what is called the heirloom seeds. Some of you may have heard that term already. It's been used a lot in the world of some crops, especially like cocoa, our Trinidad cocoa. Heirloom seeds arise from open pollinated plants that pass on similar traits from the parent plant to the offspring, which we call the child plant. And it tends to be true to form. It is referred to as true to form. When you have a hybrid seed, it is the result of a cross-pollination between two different plants of the same variety, that is. So hybrid simply means crossbred, crossbred. Some people get that term mixed up, so once and for all, you could get it correct in your head. High doesn't mean high up in the sky here. It just means cross. So a hybrid, like me, is a douglarized plant, a crossbreed. Then you have genetically modified seeds. They have their DNA modified. Sometimes people, what they do in plant breeding, they insert specific traits. Sometimes they use parts of something else, like a bacteria, to insert in the DNA of that seed so that it gives it a different effect. Sometimes it gives it an effect on taste or color or texture in the final product. And those are called genetically modified seeds. For instance, you have a lot of corn seeds that are genetically modified, soya bean that are genetically modified. Okay, moving on. What is seed germination? It's the process by which the seed embryo develops into a seedling. And it involves the emergence of the radicle, which we call the root, and the plumule, which we call the shoot. The three important things that are required for germination will be water, oxygen, and some heat. So if your seed is in a very cold place in the ground and you have many rainy days, it may just not germinate. So you need a little bit of heat. You need water, so if the soil is bone dry, it's not going to germinate until the rain falls. And you need some air, and that's why sometimes it's important to loosen the soil, to give it some air down there, to get some oxygen for germination to take place. Okay? So you see a baby plant there in the hand of the person in the picture. You see the seed, and the seed coat is shriveling. Everything is emerging. You see the radicle or the root section coming out and growing down into the ground, and the plumule growing up, forming the shoot. When you do your biology, they say one is, they exhibit what is called geotropism, negatively or positively. Okay. What is a good seedling? Seedlings must be healthy looking. Now it's saying that my internet is unstable, so I hope that you're still getting me. They must be visibly free of pests and diseases. They must be upright. You don't want to plant over a seedling that is lying down or looking curled in some way. You're starting off with a plant that is not the best. The roots should be white in color, and the rooting medium must be moist. So in the picture there, you can see the roots. They look white, they look healthy. There's no sign of disease, no pest attack. The plant is straight up, that kind of thing. That is what you want in a good seedling. A close-up of it. This is a lettuce seedling. Very healthy. There's some more seedlings, tomato seedlings. In fact, one of the assignments I would like to give you, and you would want to think about it from now, and Sister Gabrielle, I would ask you to kindly coordinate this out on this. I am thinking we could divide the team, the group of people on this session right now, and I'm thinking about 5 teams of about 10 people each. That should give us sufficient size for a team to work. And I'm thinking more about the economics of it. If a team were to put up and buy a packet of seeds, they can do their own seedlings. And we could think about 5 different plants. We could think about lettuce, pak choi, tomato, pimento, and I'm thinking maybe a root crop or a bulb crop like onion or garlic or chive or something like that. Um, Maybe even sweet potato or beet that could be grown using some tubers or eddos. So 5 groups, each want to think of a crop that they would want to set some seeds for, some seedlings or plants. Each group will be about 10, maybe less depending on how many we get, but 5 groups of 10 will be 50. If we have more people, fine. We'll have more people in the team or more teams, but each team would be responsible for setting some seeds. We don't want each person to buy a packet of seeds. Seeds are very expensive. And then when you set, let's say, 1,000 seeds, you might have to find a market for it. But if a group were to buy a packet of seed, and we're not talking about a whole can of seeds, just a packet of seeds, so you get into the practice, and then you share the plants among yourselves. If it turns out to be 100 plants, why not share it among the entire group? So the group with lettuce will share with those who have pak choi. Those with pak choi will share with those who have tomato. So everybody will get 1 or 2 of each of the plants. You get the gist of what I'm thinking?
But again,
Yeah, that would be great.
Yes?
the one constraint we have is that not all the persons are from this region. We have people from as far as Port of Spain who registered for today. So we
Oh, I see.
all over the country. Yes, we have persons
Okay.
from all over the
All
country.
right.
So getting
Let
people
that
in the
not be a
group
problem.
to work together might be a challenge.
Okay, what we will do,
Mhm.
because I'm closer to north than you, Sister Gabrielle, I would assist in coordinating what happens in the north. But I like the idea. I don't want to be dictatorial in this. I am throwing out the idea to you. It's a way to get the practice in. You got to have seedlings to plant anyway. Going down the road in the future, you will want to do any kinds of seedlings that you would like to try your hand at. If we form groups of people in each district that would want to do some more agriculture, there'll be a need for more seedlings. More and more, you'd recognize you don't want to put poisons in your plant. And therefore, if from this very seedling stage you avoid putting on pesticides onto your plants, you are sure of the kind of crops you're going to get from it. I had a slide I wanted to show you, and maybe I had too many things to show today, but particularly for the group that is graduating. You know what underpins all of what we are doing here this evening? I had this conversation with Sister Candy, and she's extremely strong and focused about this idea. It is something that also pervades um, the thinking that you find within the church and that would be manifested through Pastor Walcott and Pastor Joshua. And that is, we need to be eating healthy. So many people are going down with diseases. I was talking with a gentleman yesterday who said, I'm young and I just discovered I have cancer, colon cancer. Where does that come from? And you hear all kinds of illnesses. And what I wanted to show you is there's a WHO report that shows 65% of all deaths are covered by 10 major lifestyle diseases. And in that 10, 3 of them are cancers. Could you imagine that? And the other one is diabetes, and people going down with high blood pressure and high cholesterol and overactive or underactive thyroid. All of these things are as a result of what we eat. I read a report just yesterday on the internet. You may have seen it. It's highlighted that paraquat, and paraquat is a weed killer. It's known commonly as gramoxone. Paraquat is now considered as a culprit causing Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And how often, people just spray these things on their fields. And God knows why he sent us back into looking at the plants that he had given us and some of the worries and pains and the sweat of our brow that it takes to cultivate some of these things. So it's an idea I'm throwing out. Let's see how it pans off, Sister Gabrielle. And let's not burden the people with any assignment unduly, but I would like to see an assignment like this taken up since it's a much bigger group. And we'll see what we'll do with the Port of Spain people. Okay? Sounds like a plan?
Yes.
Okay, good. I was wondering if I was transmitting. So I'm going on. Advantages of using seedlings. Profitable crop production begins with healthy young plants. The use of seedlings allows the grower the ability to time the market or to time anything because the harvest date can be roughly determined. The grower can schedule the date of planting in the field. Right? If you set seeds home, and you know it's 100 seeds you set and you'll have 100 plants and you have 5 friends and you say I'll give each of you 15 plants, right, and I'll keep the rest for myself, or you all could contribute $1 per plant and therefore you'll get back $15 from each person. That's $75 if it's 15 by 5, that kind of thing. So it becomes worthwhile and they know the quality of plants that they're getting. All right. By growing their own seedlings, the grower can guarantee the variety. You know, a lot of us have gotten carried away by what happens in our everyday life. I'll give you one quick example. Corn has moved way far to the left from what it's supposed to be or what it used to be. No longer do we see the corn that we used to eat when I was growing up. And we call it sweet corn, and we call it Canadian sweet corn, and we call it by all other names. But those corns are genetically modified, and we don't even have a clue what that is going to do to our bodies. But we go and we buy the genetically modified corn seeds and we plant it, and we continue using it, and we don't even know what effects it's going to have on our body. What if there's somebody in the countryside has these field corn, what we call field corn, which they used to filter the chickens. In any case, we used to still boil it or roast it. And that's the healthier corn. And that's what we mean by knowing what you're planting. Okay? Disadvantages of using seedlings. The high cost of some seedlings may add significantly to the cost of production. I don't know what's the price of seedlings now. Anybody could tell me, anybody on the show could tell me how much you pay for tomato seedlings now if you go to the nursery shop? Maybe Miss Marcia Housewell Mitchell, you could tell us? Or
A
James might be able to tell
dollar
us.
for one. A dollar
Dollar
for
for
one, sir.
$1
some
for one.
some
Okay.
stores 3 for $5.
3 for $5. Okay.
50 cents for one.
Oh, that's cheap. If you're getting plants at 50 cents per plant, that is quite okay, except you don't know what they have already put in it, huh?
No, we from Rio Claro, 50 cents for one. You buy a crate, you get $60 a crate. A crate is 128.
Okay, there you go. Extra labor and time may be required to transplant certain seed types. So, for instance, when you do celery and parsley and you get 500 plants in a tray, you now have to pick each one of them out and transplant them before you could even put it out into your field. And that takes a lot of time and effort, and you get some extra deaths and so on. Okay? You will work out your own logistics and see what works for you. I'm glad, brother, that you could raise that suggestion about seedlings available in Rio Claro. That sounds like a good idea. Choosing and purchasing seed. The general rule is read the seed label information. Choose seed that is true to variety, especially if you want to get into a little business. Let's suppose 10 people from a village or from a church or from a family decide to get together in these times of unemployment or rising food prices, and you want to plant a specific variety of tomatoes. You don't want to put 5 different varieties on one bed, huh? Because then when you go to sell it in the neighborhood, they all look so different. An extra large one, a small one, a pointed one, a round one, a juicy one, a dry one. People want uniformity in the crop that they're getting. Okay, so how you do that? You choose seed that is true to variety. Select the best adapted variety. I would want to think tomatoes that grow best in Rio Claro may not grow the same way in Cedrus, may not grow the same way in Port of Spain because of the different conditions and soil types. You would want a high germination rate, 80% plus. So it's good if you are buying the seeds to ask the store what is the germination rate expected. And I don't know how sophisticated the market is now, but you could tell them, listen, if this turns out to be 50% germination rate, you need to give me a discount, or are you prepared to give me the discount now? But having information allows you to have that discussion. Huh? A high purity, like 98% plus. Whenever seeds are harvested, they're not always 100% pure. You always have something that is floating around or blowing around in a storeroom that could get mixed into it. Somebody told me last week they planted okras, and one of the plants bore sorrel. That's just a case of the 2% impurities you get. Okay? You have other contaminants, like you might even get weed seeds growing in it. So just know that. But you have to look out for what grows. Oh, by the way, these days you have to be careful what else might be in your packet of seeds, especially if you're buying it locally, because some people might be planting plants that you don't want to plant, right? And you know the definition of a weed. A plant that is not the one you want to plant is called a weed. So if you're growing tomatoes, but you get something else growing up in there, that is a weed. So be careful with the seeds you get. Make sure they're pure. Some seeds you may not be able to identify. Who knows? The police might pass and tell you, wait, you have an illegal crop. Choose a reputable supplier, and I know we have reputable suppliers around. Okay, selecting your own seed. Either a whole field or a part of a field may be selected for seed collection. Somebody in Rio Claro might want to do a field of bandania. By the way, bandania has money, eh? Charo Benny? Yep. I was told you plant 10 feet wide by 20 feet long, you have enough bandania to supply the market. You could lock into a market. You could process your bandania right there at home. You know, ladies do their things and label it and sell it. Make some more money. Use only healthy plants that are not infested by pests or diseases. Use only plants that display desired characteristics such as color, height, fruit size, and the high yields. Just to reflect on color, if your tomatoes are orange colored but you really want red ones, then you don't use the seeds from the orange colored ones. Same thing for peppers. If you wanted red peppers and not yellow peppers, then you have to select seeds from the red peppers. All right? Structures, design, and layout. This is for people who want to get together and do seedlings as a business. A constructed building purposely designed or arranged in order to house and provide the seedlings with the best as possible growing conditions. Seedlings not affected by the external weather condition, especially rainfall. Sometimes you get a heavy rainfall, it could just destroy your entire bed of seedlings. So having it protected, covered in some way, helps to nurture them while they're still very small and tender. It gives you the ability to grow a wide range of seedlings, the ability to produce better quality seedlings, and ability to command better prices for your seedlings, especially if you're doing it as a business. So for those who are thinking a little bit business-minded, just consider these conditions as you try to plan your business and embark on it. Some business considerations. Growers must have a vision and do their homework. I want to tell you that the ministry is full of what you call that talent, hard-working, dedicated officers. I know James used to be really hard-working, and I'm sure Marcia Housewell Mitchell is equally dedicated. I know that Sister Gabrielle is very talented, very dedicated, and there are others in your area who are just waiting there to help you. They're just a call away. Okay, that's a free service offered by the Ministry of Agriculture to help you plan. Also determine what's the cost of setting up a complete system. Which seedlings should be considered. You don't want to go and doing seedlings for squash and find out that the neighbor planting squash, but they're doing a direct planting, direct into the hole. They're not transplanting. Okay? What should be my marketing strategy? And coming from a marketing background, I recognize a lot of people do stuff and then they wonder, what do I do with all this stuff? So they don't do the marketing plan or strategy early enough. Always think about price, product, place, promotion, and perception. Somebody told me when I told them about this project, they said, wait, you could actually call your produce after the name of the group, whether it's a church group, whether it's a community group, whether it's called Rio Claro vegetables, fresh vegetables, or Adventist vegetables, or Christian seedlings. I don't know, whatever sells. So just giving you a hint there. Once you think in business, think about how you're going to position yourself in the marketplace. The perception the buyers get about you and your produce. They perceive it as cleaner, healthier, whatever, better, and they go for it and they pay the better prices. In selecting a site at your home or your farm, just remember you need to have water to water them and some electricity sometimes you need to have nearby in case you have to use any electric gadgets. So you'll want to consider that. Regular water supply and good water quality. Okay, I advised you all in, at least the set that is graduating. Last time we spoke, I reminded you to be careful about contaminants in water. Because when you put that water on your crops, you are going to eat and ingest those contaminants. Whether it's contaminants coming from a sewer, from animal waste, or even if it is heavy metals. And just to say a little more, not to scare you, heavy metals are found in some parts of Trinidad. And whenever you have a flood, the heavy metals come and settle in your bed of crops. And there are some crops that take up heavy metals. They just love the heavy metals. What are the heavy metals? You have lead, you have cadmium, for instance, and these heavy metals are bad for human health. They go to the brain and cause brain disorders. It will actually cause you to lose the baby if you're pregnant, okay? And the one vegetable crop that is a culprit in terms of taking up heavy metals from the soil would be the brassicas, your cabbage, your pak choy, your cauliflower, your broccoli. So if you're planting those, be careful about heavy metal contamination in your soil or flood waters that may bring heavy metals. Talk to your agricultural officer. They are very friendly, they're very helpful, they cooperate, they're available at their office on a Wednesday, especially if you need to go visit them and show them something, and they'll help you. Orientation of the structure is important, meaning the way you align it in terms of the wind direction as well as the amount of sunlight. You wouldn't want to expose your plants, some of them to sun and some of them not getting any sunshine at all. They ought to get some amount of sunshine for the day. Consider if you're going to do future expansion, if it's a business, avoid steep slopes because you have problems there, either in mobilizing things as well as in causing erosion and destruction to your structure. Avoid poorly drained areas prone to flooding. I often hear people say, gosh, I lost all my pumpkin in this flood last week. Yeah, but they went and planted in a lagoon. We have to know that we're living in times when the weather pattern is not always consistent. We are into climate change, and therefore we could get some unusual weather. It is forecasted, for instance, in the next few days, we should get some rain and maybe flooding. So you don't choose those flood-prone areas to go and set up your seedlings, then all your investment is lost, or even to grow a crop. Some tools that you might require, some batter boards, a spirit level, a string is important if you want to level things. An auger, you don't really have to get an auger. You could get a post hole digger. You could even rent these tools, borrow. You don't have to buy all these things. Having a drill is important. You could borrow a drill, have some drill bits. A step ladder is extremely useful. Don't climb in on these structures and then somebody falls off or you end up dangling from some height. Scaffolding would be essential. Okay, you could use strong drums if you want to create a scaffold, or you could rent a scaffold. Sometimes you need some plywood, 3/4 inch would do. A miter or a circular saw. You don't always need these things every week, every month of the crop life, but you could borrow or rent a square, a cordless power tool, some power cords sometimes, tape measure, socket set, a sledgehammer to hammer down your stakes. So those are some of the things you'll need. As I say, you could borrow. Sometimes you'd want to cover your shed with saran. It's called a saran, it's a mesh. Know that these things are very expensive. There are different types that are letting different amount of sunlight. You might need 50% sunlight. So you get a shade cloth, they're sometimes called, that gives a 50% sunlight, equally 50% shade. Or you could get 75% shade, 25% sunlight. If you do that, then you will need another part of the shed that has more sunlight. So be careful how you go investing in these cloths. Get some help and some advisory from your neighborhood Ministry of Agriculture office and officers. Sometimes you may cover the shed so much, the temperature goes up. Remember, we live under tropical conditions. So you don't want to deliberately create a greenhouse condition here in the tropics where you now have to invest in fans to blow the hot air out. Be careful about that. I always warn people about going into greenhouse production in the tropics. Greenhouse production is not really for us on this side of the world. You have more costs in trying to keep the temperature down. Simple frame galvanized pipe. I just thought I'd throw in some of these so you will see. Ordinary plumbing pipes that you could use and use screw type elbows and mount something and you cover it and you have a shed. You could put different levels of trays. It's always important to protect these young plants from birds. Sometimes birds find your plants look so nice and juicy. The young plants, they just pass one night and they eat some, or the iguana might pass. All right, so you got to protect it. Sometimes you can just use some wire mesh. This is a plant shed I saw at PCS Nitrogen in Point Lisas. They use these pipes and they use the PVC to bend over to form an arch, and then they put the covering over it. Okay. Sorry about that. This is one that is more expensive, but you could see the amount of area it covers and how easy it is for the nursery worker to be a little more comfortable as you work, because agriculture work could be hard, but you could make it easier on you because there's a lot of bending to do when you have to bend and tend to those seedlings. So a combination of heavy sunshine on you and bending and all of that combined with your age and your little aches and pains. Plus it's good for the plants. It's better for the plants not to have the full sunlight. Okay, that's another design. If you want more information on this, you could contact us. We'll be able to guide you. That's a gable roof, so you have easier runoff of the water. You could use plastic on that roof. That would let in a certain amount of sunshine and at the same time handle the amount of rain that might fall. A little bit on roots. Fibrous roots is a system with no single large tap root, because when the plant is still young, the radicle dies back and the lateral roots grow downward and outward from the stem, branching continuously in all directions to form this dense mass. And that is why when you have a plant in a small container or plastic bag, there comes a time when you must move it from there and give it more room. It's called root room. And if you bought a plant in a cup or a little bag, you don't want to keep it there too long because it will become root bound. That's when the roots start to make circles inside the pot or in the cup or in the bag. It stunts the plant. You don't want that to happen, to stunt the plant. Taproots. Plants require taproots, especially if it's going to be on the ground for a longer period. And this applies more like to the vegetable crops that stay beyond 90 days into 120 days and sometimes 6 months to a year. And that will be like tomatoes, melangine, peppers, pimentos especially. Okay, so I put this one here to remind you what the taproot is. When you take it out of the bag, be careful with the roots. You don't want to break the tip because that will be the end of the taproot and you'll get just fibrous root. The taproot is meant to go down deep to pull nutrients from the depths of the soil and to anchor the plant in the case of a tree crop, like if you're planting a cocoa tree or let's say a mango tree, okay? Root hairs. You could see on that piece of root there from the germinating plant, a set of tiny hairs. Those hairs are responsible for taking in water and nutrients. Now, sometimes while the plant is very small and you're moving it from one tray into a bigger tray or a pot or to transplant it out, if you damage that, the whole plant will suffer. In fact, it could actually die. There's a term that is used for those who are practicing agriculture or farmers. It's called orpilon. When you take the plant out, you take it with some soil around the root. Orpilon, like a pilon rider on a motorbike, hugging on to the rider. So you want the soil hugging on to the root. You don't want to remove those bits of soil, else you will damage the root and even move out root hairs. And what that does, it puts the plant under more stress. You don't want to stress the plant. Okay? Rooting powder. Now, we are always concerned about chemicals and the use of chemicals in plant, but rooting powder, also known as an auxin, naturally occurs in plants. When you're trying to plant, let's say, a cutting is when you cut off a piece of a plant. A lot of ladies do that. They break a piece of stick from a friend's plant and they carry it home and they stick it in the ground to grow. Well, you can assist that stick in getting, or that cutting in getting some roots by adding some rooting powder, which is an auxin, IAA, indole acetic acid. And there's a way to just have some in a little container. You wet the tip of the cutting, you dip it, make sure it gets the powder around it, and then you plant it. What that does, it encourages the cutting to produce roots quicker, so it doesn't remain there in the soil and begin to rot. Okay? For those of you who do cuttings, this would be useful. And this tells you how to use the rooting powder. I just said it. Seedling trays. There are different kinds of seedling trays. Okay? The little cups are called cells, and they vary in shape and they vary in depth. You could get 128 or 144 or 200. It varies. They're made from recyclable plastic. Sometimes they call them jiffy pots, made from peat moss or wood pulp, and it's 100% biodegradable. That is the peat pots or wood pulp pots. You observe I have a line drawn through styrofoam. We no longer use styrofoam in Trinidad. If you're following the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, sometime in 2020, they said we will start to phase out styrofoam. Styrofoam does not rot. It's a pollutant to the soil, and you don't want to take a styrofoam cup and bury it into your soil bed. Okay? And try not to buy things that are made out of styrofoam because it's not a healthy thing to have in the environment. Okay, seedling trays. Different plant species have different requirements for space, nutrients, and water. And you determine based on the size of the plant you want, how big you want that cup to be. Larger cells hold a larger volume of media, and because there's a larger root room, seedlings experience less transplant shock. We just dealt with transplanting and shocking the plant, where the root hairs are damaged. Sometimes the plant will actually die after 2 days. Okay, smaller trays with 1.5 inch depth are ideal for crops like cabbage, cauliflower, kale, and lettuce. Okay, well, you use the bigger ones, 1.5 inches to 2.5 inches, for things like tomato and peppers and so on. Okay, these are just different size of trays that you could find. If you go to a good agro shop, they will have them on sale. You could buy them, you could check the holes, fill them with the medium, put in your seed one by one, let them germinate, so that when you're ready to transplant your crop, you have your own seedlings and you know how we did it. This is using a big tray where you just scatter the seeds. Most time it's fine seeds. It's too difficult to separate them one by one because they're so fine. We're going to look at that in a little while. And so therefore you scatter them over that whole surface. But then there comes a point in time where you have to take out those plants individually and put them into a new tray. So sometimes it's worth the pain to take a tray with individual cups and put a seed each and let them germinate. It's easier to handle, less work in the long run. Okay, these are different ones, 50 cells, 38 cells. You realize we call them containers because they're cone shaped to allow the root to go down and for the soil to come back out easily when you take the plant out. Reuse and or return of trays. Keep used or returned trays or containers in a separate area and away from trays containing plants or clean trays. There's a reason for that. You want to stop the spread of any kind of disease that they may have been carrying. All trays must first be sterilized before re-entering the nursery area. Disinfect trays by submerging them in a chlorine solution, and the dosage is given there. 1 teaspoon of bleach in about 13 gallons of water. That's about like 3 pigtail buckets. Okay, 1 teaspoon, a third of a teaspoon in each bucket. So if you have it in a let's say a basin or a tub, 13 gallons of water, 1 teaspoon of bleach, you soak them for 20 minutes. That should sterilize them. It's good to sterilize your farm tools as well in the same way, your cutlass, your knife, your hand fork, and so on. Soil media, characteristics of own potting soil, Growers must ensure that if they are using their own soil mix, it must have the following features. We dealt with this before for those who are graduating. It must be loose and crumbles easily. There must be no visible sign of lumps. It must be rich in organic matter. And let me just re-emphasize that organic matter is extremely important. Without going into the science of it, there's something referred to by the officers as cation exchange capacity, meaning the soil would have nutrients in it, but the plant can't get it. It's there, but the plant can't use it. Why? Because of the cation exchange capacity. It's not at the level required for the particles to be taken up by the plant, the nutrients. What encourages that cation exchange capacity is also shortened using the acronym CEC. Once you have organic matter in the soil, it increases your cation exchange capacity. So it's always important to have organic matter. When you burn your land, when you cut the bush and burn, you actually burn off all the organic matter, including the earthworms that would die, that does so much good for your soil. And useful soil organisms are also killed. You kill bad things too, but you kill everything. So just back to the point, organic matter is important in soil. You can add that using manures. Your soil mix must also contain sharp sand because you want the soil to be aerated. So there's a balance between the soil you have already, some sharp sand. Um, Brother Lloyd spoke about using some gravel he had home, and I hope it's really sharp sand, Brother Lloyd. Some sharp sand, some organic matter, and your soil should give you a good mix. Okay? This soil media here, called ProMix, is a soilless media comprising peat moss, perlite, starter nutrients, and limestone. It is very loose, lightweight, and has high water holding capacity. Some people add perlite to it. It's white, it's light in weight, and it's high aeration properties. So it doesn't add to that kind of weight you get from sharp sand. But this tend to be expensive. I would only advise you go for it if you get it very cheap. Somebody call a sale and they have ProMix and they want to sell it out, you can buy some of that. But other than that, that is what it contains. You are coming very close to that kind of thing when you add organic manures to your soil. So be friendly with people who could supply you organic matter, chicken manure and cow manure and so on. A warning I give to the class that is graduating, that I should give to this group, this new group. The bacteria responsible for tetanus lives in the soil. So once you get in your hands in the soil, ensure that you've been vaccinated for tetanus. The tetanus bacteria likes to go into broken skin or little puncture wounds, and they live in conditions that has no oxygen. So puncture wounds, especially if you get a scrape or puncture with a wire or a thorn or a nail, you know, people say they got a nail chuck. Or if the dog bite them, that's a puncture wound with the dog tooth or dog teeth. The, the tetanus bacteria doesn't come from the dog, it's in the soil. So having gone into the soil, the bacteria will enter your wound, go into the area where there's no oxygen and multiply. And when they multiply, they produce an exudate, which is a toxin that locks up your muscle and cause you to eventually die because the muscles of the heart wouldn't be able to beat again. And therefore, the caution should be taken once you're handling soils to make sure your vaccine card says you've had your tetanus vaccine. If not, go and get it renewed, please. Okay? In that case, it will be useful to also wear some gloves, right? I'm just warning you. I'd hate to know that anybody in this course went very merrily into their soils and got themselves affected. Sowing seeds. We're coming to the end of this. I'm trying to time myself. Sowing seeds. Make sure there are drainage holes at the bottom of the trays. Wet the mix thoroughly and let any excess water drain. Next, fill the tray almost to the top with the mix. Place the seeds in the cells and lightly cover with some of the mix again. Okay, so if you see in the picture, it's not all the way up to the top. You could put the seeds in and then sprinkle some of the mixture on top. You could use a piece of stick, like how they screed concrete, and level it off so the excess comes out. Uniform depth of planting is required. You don't put some of them deep down and some shallow. Actually, if you measure the size of the seed, when you plant it, the seed should not be more than 3 times their width into the soil. So if it is, let's say, 0.5 centimeter wide, the seed, it should be in the soil 1.5 centimeters deep. If you have a seed that is 2 inches wide, then you could plant it 6 inches deep. Okay, but you don't take a tiny seed and put it 6 inches deep. It will die. Before that plumule could emerge at the top to reach the sunlight, it has exhausted all the food from the seed and therefore it will die before it emerges. Okay? Get uniform light distribution, uniform water application. Okay? Yes, a picture showing how to fill the trays. You don't have to fill the tray one by one. You put the material on top and use a screed, a little piece of stick, and pull it across the top of the cells. Okay, you saw that one already. Those are some seedlings that have been plucked out from the mass seedling tray that you could now put into individual trays, but that just involves extra work. Okay, we can see this is a big nursery program. You as a householder, you will only need one or at most two trays. If you do 3 different crops or 4 different crops, you plant half, then the next week you plant the next half, so you get different stages of germination and so on. Okay, cuttings. What will be cuttings? As I hinted before, you go to visit your girlfriend, you see a plant, you say, girl, I want a piece of that. I could get a piece. That's your cutting. It's not a seed. Okay, taken from the main shoot or any side shoot, growing from the same plant or stem. And among cuttings, you have hardwood, semi-hardwood, and softwood. Normally, hardwood would not bear roots. So a plant that has hard, woody stuff would be like a guava. You would hardly get a guava stick taking roots. You have semi-hardwood like mango, avocado, croton, citrus, ixoras. They may take root, especially the ixoras and the crotons. You would hardly get avocado and mango taking root. You could use some rooting powder and might be successful. It's done with cocoa. Softwood will be mostly ornamentals. They are called herbaceous plants or non-woody plants. As I said, they're mostly ornamentals. There are root cuttings too. Most people don't realize this, but if you want to get a breadfruit tree, you could use a cutting. There's no seed in the breadfruit, but the cutting is taken from the root. Use a root cutting and you'll get a plant. All of you are acquainted with leaf cuttings, right? From begonias and African violet. You know your wonder of the world plant, leaf cuttings, okay? You see some leaf cuttings there. Some people call that plant lash, a mother-in-law tongue. And you see a woody cutting on the left picture. You can see some woody cuttings there. And they give them some shade. Then the same kind of soil medium that you would have mixed, you would have put in some rooting hormone and keep them damp, not too wet because you don't want them to rot. And don't let them dry out because the young roots will also die. Tuber cuttings, that's cassava on the left. You could use yam, edos, sweet potatoes. Use a cutting, put it in soil medium, and you could get roots. You could get a plant. These are cuttings in water. Onions, leek, garlic, sweet potatoes. You could put them in a jar with some water and they produce roots, and then you transplant them. Garlic will do that too. Your production area, if you're going into business, you must ensure clean and sanitary conditions within and around the entire structure at all times, because plant diseases have a way of spreading. You see something happening in your nursery, take it out immediately. Disinfect your skin, your gloves, your tools before you go back. Okay? This is a style of nursery culture where you get different levels. It eases your bending over when you have to bend and attend to these plants. It's also cheap. Water management, water seedlings as needed. Do not allow the media to dry out. Okay, set up a schedule. Avoid watering after 4 p.m. Why? Because that's when your fungal diseases step in. You want when you water, the leaves will be dried by the time the sun goes down. There are these little misters, they're called, misting system, a special tap that allows the water to come out as a mist. And these things are now available at a very, very cheap rate compared to when I was a student at EKF. Preparation for transplanting. Apply light watering 2 hours before transplanting the seedling to another container. Always water them first. And then about 2 hours pass, so they have taken up enough water so they could survive the little shock. Always choose the healthiest plants. Properly space the plants for good growth. I was looking at a picture from one of the students who is graduating, and you had something like about 12 tomato plants in one bucket. That's too many. Okay, at most in a bucket you'll have is two. Better if you had one. Okay, and give them room. Remember, they want to grow their leaves. The leaves have to catch the sunlight. The sunlight in the leaves, together with water, nutrients, and the chlorophyll, will make food. The plant will grow. It will reach a stage where it says initiate flowering. The flower will take more nutrients out of the plants to form the fruit. The fruit will come to the level you want it, with the nutrition content you want for your food, and therefore you need to give it space. Sometimes we have our plants too close, the leaves shade each other. Even in one plant, you could have too many leaves shading each other, and what's happening is food is being wasted. That's when you do pruning. That's another topic by itself. We're not doing pruning here in this course. Hardening off is when you expose the plants slowly to more sunlight, whether it's half an hour more, an hour the next day, 2 hours the next day, 3 hours, 4 hours. By the end of the week, you're ready to put it out in the field. Because when you plant out in the field, it's going to get the full sunshine for 12 hours or 11 hours. All right, so you can't suddenly shock the plant. It's like you came home from maternity hospital, you take the baby and you just put the baby in the garage and say, okay, baby, we are home. Nope, you don't do that. So don't do that with your plants. Expose them to the sunshine bit by bit is called hardening. Plant nutrition. I know this group is new, the other group has been through some of this. Always use half the recommended rate of balanced fertilizer with micronutrients. My pet peeve with most fertilizers, they give you N, P, and K. And I will do this session over with the new class when we meet again. But your fertilizer must not just have N, P, and K, but all the micronutrients. A little zinc, a little copper, a little boron, molybdenum, manganese, and so on. Coincide the fertilizer application with heavy watering for that day. Ideal time to fertilize is early morning. Do not fertilize between mid-morning and mid-afternoon. Why? Because at that time, the plant is losing a lot of water. It's called transpiration, like how human beings sweat, plants transpire. So they lose water. And therefore, if you fertilize between mid-morning and mid-afternoon, the plants could end up getting burnt because there's too much salt in the plant because of the amount of water that's been lost. Begin fertilizing your seedlings once it has developed true leaves. We said earlier, if you have a well-balanced soil medium, you put in your manures, there will be no need for additional fertilizers. It's good at the start when you do the soil mixture to have some fertilizers. I'll recommend the amount when I do the next class with the new students, but the students that are graduating, we've been through this already. You know the ratio. Just a review on the nutrients. Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen are all needed. The major nutrients are N, P, and K. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. You would remember that nitrogen is for leafy growth. So we say N is for shoot. Phosphorus is for root growth. That's the P part. N, P, and K. P, phosphorus is for the roots. The potassium, the K part, is important for flowers and fruits. A word to the people who like horticulture. If your rose plant's not producing flowers, you need to add a little K. Water them with a little K in the nutrients. In the case of fruits, we say secondary nutrients are extremely important. Calcium, magnesium, sulfur. If they are absent, the fruits will begin to split. The biggest offender is tomatoes. At the bottom of the tomato, it begins to get black. It's called blossom end rot. Part of the fruit where the blossom remains is called the blossom end. And the particular symptom is described as blossom end rot. It's a sign that you don't have calcium in your soil, or you need a little calcium trace in your fertilizer blend or in your manure. Micro elements or trace elements will be like iron, manganese, selenium, copper, molybdenum, boron, and cobalt. When you buy a packet of nutrients that carry microelements, you use in very tiny amounts in a gallon of water just to water the plant once or twice in its early life to make sure it can manifest the fruit that you want it to bear in the end. Okay, this is very simple stuff. You don't have to learn this off, just know it. And so that when you read stuff or you ask for advice, you're able to follow what they say. We said nitrogen, N there is for leafy growth, stems and branches. So in this first fertilizer, 46 or 30, 10, 10, it's high nitrogen. The other one, 10, 52, 10 or 12, 24, 12 or 8, 36, 16, it's high in phosphorus. That's for root development. Plants that grow roots very slowly need a little push with some phosphorus. And indeed, if you're planting a root crop, you need some more phosphorus for that. And that is why we do crop rotation. I just want to stick this in here because when you take out a lot of nitrogen and you go back and take out more nitrogen and you go back and repeat that crop, more nitrogen, that will be leafy crops, the soil is becoming imbalanced. And that's why you rotate. You put a root crop after. You put a crop that's going to give you fruits after. So you take out different elements out of that soil and keeps it balanced. High K is to promote flowers and fruits and general plant health. So when you get 12, 12, 17, of course you'll see some fertilizers marked 12, 12, 17, 2. The 2 is some micro elements. Okay? A balanced fertilizer will be like 20, 20, 20 or 10, 10, 10. Someone bought a bag of Nutrex, I think, which is 20, 20, 20. You're not getting any trace elements in that. And I say that because you could buy these specialized ones that carry trace elements. This is not things you buy and scatter in an acre of land. Eh? This is for individual pot culture, trough culture, and maybe just spray on the leaves. So one is Nutrient Express, 441.27. And if you can read some of the fine print, you see some of the finer micronutrients. 15.9.12, and if you look at the top, you could see some micronutrients listed. You could see the price too. That's $75 for a pound. Okay. Miracle Grow is another one that's on the market. I'm not making any recommendation of any particular product. You choose. Okay. This is the next one. Technigrow. And you see it has copper, boron, magnesium, right? But the general formula is 15, 10, 15 in this Technigrow. On the right, the Super Starter for starting plants, 9, 45, 15. The 45 is put there to give you a quick root development. Because if the roots are poorly developed, when you transplant it, it wouldn't grow properly. All right, I'm coming to the end. I will take questions in a while. This is another one, 24, 7, 15. This one is good for lawn. You see that 24, high N, to make the grass grow. You want a lot of leaves. You don't want flowers, really. Could anybody tell me what is happening here with these plants? Why they're so yellow? The first one to answer correctly will get something special.
Potassium.
plant.
Potassium.
Lacking calcium.
Too much water.
Anybody else?
Too much sunlight.
Calcium.
If this plant is supposed to
Enough
get N,
nitrogen.
P, and K, from the yellowing of the leaves, it's an early indicator, it's a seedling, that it's deficient in nitrogen. Now, if it was a water problem, you'll see the leaves starting to die. They'll be hanging down, they'll be wilted. An abundance of water on a healthy plant, you'll start to see getting brown spots, fungus growing. But this is definitely yellow. Yellowing in these plants, all the leaves are firm and looking good and erect. It's a sign that nitrogen is missing. Who said nitrogen just now? I need to get the name of the person who said nitrogen. Okay, maybe they're not interested in getting my special gift. I'll go on. Yeah, but it's nitrogen. Pests and diseases. Insects may chew parts or all of a leaf, resulting in skeletonized leaves, or they may bore holes in the leaves. We want to stay away from using poisonous chemicals on our crops. I want to admonish you that not every little hole you see on a leaf is a reason to be too concerned. If all your plants start to look like that, know you have some population of insects there that are undesirable. What you may want to do, and I've seen it done in some backyard strips, where they put a net over the plants, you're sure it's protected. It's to exclude insects. They come out in the night and they eat. If it is leaf cutting ants, you can tell when a batchak is eating your leaf. There's a characteristic mark that they leave, a pattern as they eat. It's important to follow the nest, and there at that nest, you could use some batchak bait. Be careful not to use too much. Leaf miners, you see these trails on the leaves? It takes away some of the ability of the plant to produce food, but it doesn't do a whole lot of damage to warrant you spraying that to kill the insect that is living inside the leaf. What you can do, if you see it only on one or two leaves, you can pluck those leaves off and get rid of those leaves. Burn them, put them in a garbage bag and tie it. Because when the adults emerge, that's when they go and lay again, and the caterpillar that hatches will be mining through the leaves, eating the green substance, the chlorophyll. All right? So there's no need to spray that. Dampening off is something you have to look for. This is one of the major problems of seedlings. It may be caused by overcrowding, it may be caused by overwatering, or if you have a drainage problem in the trays, too much water settling in the trays overnight, you get damping off. It's dampening off. It appears as a light brown spot on the young leaves, and the seedlings usually die. Sometimes you take a seedling healthy and you plant it on the bed outside and you get too much rain for 3 days in a row. You could get dampening off. It's caused by a fungus called Pythium species. How do you prevent it? Allow the soil to dry out before watering and don't overwater. Provide good air movement through the plants. Don't crowd them up. Integrated pest management. I thought you should hear about this before you graduate. And for those who are the fresh intake for today, it's a very important concept to understand. IPM, or Integrated Pest Management. Too many times we feel we have to kill the insect pests using only poisons. I mean, we all live in homes where we get some flies sometimes, we get some mosquitoes sometimes, right? You could use a mosquito net. You can make sure your surroundings are clean. No cans are left with water for mosquitoes to breed. So use more than one approach to get rid of the pest. And that is what integrated pest management is about. So you could plant some marigold, which tend to ward off insects. You can mix the crops in your plot. Having a mixture of crops cause the insects to get confused. Crop rotation also does that. So this 6 months you plant tomatoes, next 6 months you plant lettuce. So the insect pests that were attacking the tomatoes, they come and say, hey, who moved my cheese? Who moved my cheese? No cheese? You know that syndrome? So note the symptoms, take pictures of the symptoms of pests, keep records, share with those who know, talk to your officers in your county office, the Ministry of Agriculture, they'll guide you. It's important to identify things you see. Maybe keep a sample in an envelope so you could carry it to show them what is eating your crop. Harvesting and storage. Fruits that split at maturity, for instance, okras, peas, and beans. Okay, fleshy fruits are cut open and seeds removed, cleaned, and allowed to dry, like tomato, peppers, melon, eggplant. You'll have to open those fruits and extract the seeds. It's called seed extraction. You wash them, you air dry them. Don't put them out in the sun to dry. Don't put them in the oven to dry either, you'll kill them. Good mature seeds sink. So if you have a batch of seeds before you plant, you could tell those that are good seeds. Put them in a mug of water, right? Those that sink are the good seeds, those that float, no good. So you could get rid of those that float one time. But you only do that when you're about to plant, so you know which are your good seeds. Seeds which are too dry lose their viability, so you don't over dry them. Short-lived seeds are those seeds which live for a few days to 1 year. Short-lived seeds are like citrus and mango. Avocado will last for about 1 to 2 days. Sometime on the third day, it will not germinate. By the way, a warning about avocado seeds. Number one, it doesn't give you the avocado fruit that you ate before you collected the seed. In other words, it doesn't come true to form. So you want to rely on grafted avocados. But just in case you wanted to plant an avocado from seed, if you put it in the refrigerator, it will not germinate. Avocado is peculiar in that regard. If you store an avocado in the refrigerator, the seed will not germinate. You could try it and see. Medium-lived seeds will be like vegetables, and some long-lived seeds are weeds. So the weed seeds would remain in the ground for years and they wouldn't die. Okay, Lotus is another example. Heirloom seeds will come true to type, whereas seeds from hybrids will vary. So once they're crossing in the field, when you plant those seeds, you get all kinds of different colors, size, shape, and so on. If you want one particular variety, then you have to have seeds that are true to type, or you may have to purchase those seeds. And that's why sometimes seeds are so expensive. Collect seeds from desired healthy and vigorous plants. All seeds must be allowed to dry. Moist seed encourages fungi, which kills the seed. Dry collected seeds may be placed in paper bags or aluminum foil. I like to put them in a jar, like an empty jar you have at home, and you put a couple of those silica gel desiccant packets you get in sometimes medical packages or in shoe boxes. Put them in there. It keeps the moisture from affecting the seeds, keep the seeds dry. You could also put them in a refrigerator, not in the freezer section. One thing about seeds, sometimes the particular variety you want to get comes from a certain generation. The agricultural officers refer to it as your F1 or F2. It's actually your first filial generation or your second filial generation. That is what F is about. So let's suppose those seeds are from the F10 generation. You know what are the implications? You plant, let's suppose it's watermelon. You harvest all the fruits, that's F1. You plant those seeds, you get F2. You plant again, you get F3, and you repeat and you get till you get to F10. And then it's the F10 seeds that you are buying. And that is why, again, some seeds are so very expensive, just so that you know. That's what you're paying for, right? They had to get rid of the fruits from F1 to F9, and then F10, they will sell you those seeds, whatever is the generation that is desired. This is a useful table. I wish you could take a picture of it as it's up. This tells you the number of days to generation and how long the seed could last in storage. So if you take beet will take 4 days to germinate. The seeds would last 7 to 14 years in good storage. Celery, 3 days to germinate. Cucumbers, 5 days to germinate. Corn, 2 days to germinate. Onions, 1 day. Pepper, 2 days. Pumpkin, 4 days. Sorrel, 4 days. Lettuce, 6 days. So after 3 days, when you plant the lettuce seeds, you don't say, hey, something wrong here, let me plant a new batch. You've got to wait the 6 days and take notes. Okay, you could also look at a packet of seeds. It was packaged in 2018. You know it's supposed to last 5 years. Then you know by now it's getting old. By 2023, it's gone, you know, that kind of thing. No longer viable, it's called. This other table tells you how much seeds you will get in a pound or an ounce. Looking at it, and I'll ask a question. Which seed do you think here is the smallest based on the number of seeds per weight? I'm looking at celery,
Celery.
60,000 to 72,000 seeds per ounce. Look at parsley, 240,000 to 288,000 seeds per pound. Which is smaller, parsley or celery?
Carrots, the carrots.
300 to 400,000 seeds per pound. Divided by 16 and you will know how much per ounce. Celery is still smaller than carrot. Celery is 60,000 per ounce. Multiply 60 by 16 and you will know how many seeds per pound because carrot is given in seeds per pound. Okay? Useful information to remember. Some of those seeds, and that's why, just a little tip. If you want to plant out celery seeds, it's useful if you mix it with some sand or sawdust to be able to plant it out because too many celery seeds will fall in a very small spot. Okay, it's difficult to pick out one celery seed, for instance. Record keeping, very important. I visit some people sometimes and say, hey, I like this plant. How long you have it? I get it just the other day. I say, what do you mean by the other day? Well, when the COVID lockdown started, I planted it. Oh, when the COVID lockdown started? Last year, right? So when they say just the other day, not sure what they mean by that. In record keeping, successful management depends on sustained record keeping. Always keep and store records of every aspect of the life of the seedling. Records help with planning for the future and observing trends. You might discover, for instance, the last 4 times I buy tomato seed from Mr. Xavier, they didn't bear well. Maybe he have a bad kind of seed. I must go buy somebody else. Go buy Vera. That kind of thing. You pick up different trends. Records reduce the possibility of risks, and you want to manage risks. This is an example of records you could keep. Take a picture of this. Create a chart or Excel table. The type of plant, the variety, who was the supplier, the date you purchased it, the price you paid, the date you sowed the seeds, the date it germinated, the percentage, the date you transplanted or you sold it to somebody, the fertilizers you use in your soil mix, the quantity you use, the date you applied it. If you use any pesticides, and we're advising you, we want you to look at some natural pesticides. I will post on the group chat company that is beginning to specialize in natural pesticides, and you could check them and see what they have. I understand there's some people in Princeton and Rio Claro with similar stuff. Talk to them. Other aspects, general appearance, the rate of growth, and so on. You may not like the variety in the end. You put some notes. I don't like this variety because A, B, C, and D. Okay? So you know 5 years from now when you're going to plant something, you look at your records, you're not going to plant this particular variety of tomatoes or peppers. In summary, begin with a vision of what you would like to achieve. And as you contemplate your vision, let me say, coming from the planners of this whole program, Pastor Walcott, the Adventist Fellowship Services Division, TAXA, Trinidad Adventist, I forget the entire meaning of it, TAC, right? Trinidad Adventist Community Services Association. They would like to see us not just plant, but give some to the poor, give some to the community. We want you to eat some, sell some, give some. consider that. Write it down in your plan. I'm planting 20 tomato trees. 5 is for me. 5 is to sell. 5 is to give to my friends and relatives and couple neighbors. And the other 5 is to give to the pantry. Something like that. Because if you don't write down your plan, it's still a dream, eh? Write it down. Write a plan of all your needs. Consider all your resources and choices. Implement your plan based on the above, and it can be done in phases. Like you can decide I'm planting 5 tomatoes today, 10 days later or 1 month later, I'll plant another new 5, and so on. If you do that in 4 different months, then when the first batch stop bearing, you still have the second, third, and fourth bearing. You will plant over the first batch, and therefore when batch 2, 3, and 4 stops bearing, batch 1 is ready to bear again. So you're never out of tomatoes. Keep monitoring. Sorry, did I lose you? Keep monitoring and evaluating and tweaking as you go along. Keep records. Okay? Thank you. This is the end of this presentation. I will take questions now. You can raise your hands and I'll acknowledge you. I'll stop sharing. So I'll remove the screen. So it's, sorry, not stop sharing. Good. Who will be first?
We have Deborah Healing.
Okay, Deborah, let me get your question. Could we set some ground rules, Sister Gabrielle, like how many questions we're going to take? 10 maximum, 5 maximum? What?
Let's go about 8 because I while you were lecturing, I went through the names that I have registered and tried to develop some groups like you asked for. So I will want to share that information before you close.
Okay, that sounds good. So I will let Sister Gabrielle lead out. I want to remind us that we do have some experts in the panel on set. James Williams, we also have Marcia Hoswell Mitchell,
And it's
Gabrielle.
Hausen, but the Granger is Hausen, Marcia
Oh,
Hausen.
Hausen, I had Housewell.
Hausen Mitchell.
Hausen Mitchell. I should just stick to Mitchell. All right, thanks for correcting me. Okay, so you lead out here, Sister Gabrielle. You will say, I think you said Deborah Healing first. Let's go with
Yes,
that.
then we have Jessie, Judy Sylvester, and then Eureka Griffith, that order.
Okay. Shoot. Go ahead, Deborah.
Well, because the tomatoes are my question. I want well, you were telling me that I need to start it from young to put the stick and so forth. So I just wanted some enlightenment on how to do it and when to do it at this stage. If it's so small, if to do it at this stage and when to do it and how.
Okay. It actually slipped me that I promised that I'll do this for you and for the class. Tomato is a vegetable that needs staking. Staking means you're going to put a stick next to the plant. So the moment you put it in your pot, you'd want to take the stick, whether it's a broomstick or some stick that you cut in the bush, it must be a strong stick. Don't go and spend $20 to buy a stick, huh? But you take that stick and you put it into the plant pot next to your tomato plant. Tomatoes are known to need staking because they fall over with the weight of the crop, and then the tomatoes will touch the ground and begin to decay because insects will start to eat into them. So the way you tie it to the stick is you make a little figure 8 with a string. You go around the plant, curl it into a figure 8, go around the stick, come back and complete the figure 8. Why? Because between the stick and the plant, you want to leave some room for flexibility. I wish I could do this on screen for you to see. That was the original plan. But are you able to picture it, the figure 8 that I'm speaking about? So you come around the plant and you loop it to make a figure 8, and then you go around the stick. So it doesn't really jam the plant to the stick. It leaves a little room for some play. Are you seeing this? so that when the breeze blow, the plant could shift a little bit. But if you tie it with one loop between, it goes too close to it and it doesn't leave room for the plant to get thicker, and it doesn't leave room for, if the breeze blow a little bit, it could snap at that point. So you make a figure 8 with the string as you tie the plant. And as the plant grows, you put a new tie. It grows higher, you put a new tie. And that is what staking tomatoes is about.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, next.
Jesse?
Yes, good night again. I have 3 questions, please. One of them is should potassium powder or potash powder only be put into the soil, or could it be sprayed on the leaves of the plant, like a tomato plant that is not bearing flowers, or so bringing forth flowers? The second question, how long should one assume that a seed will not sprout? Like, I know you put up the listing, but how long after should you just give up on it and just, The third question is it best to sow seeds only in pro-mix soil, or can it also be sown in the growing medium soil? The soil that we use for the grow box also. Can seeds also be sown in that, or would it be too strong for the seed? Those are my 3 questions.
Okay, I'll answer the last 2 and I'll ask James Williams to give me some help with the first question about the potash / use of ashes and how do you apply it on the plant, whether it's on the leaf or into the soil. If the recommended germination for a seed is 5 days, and you should not give up before the 5th day. But if by the 5th day you didn't see anything, it is fair enough to give yourself another 2 days to see what may have gone wrong that may have delayed the germination. But 2 days or so after the maximum time given, which is 5 days, in my sample that I'm using for the example, then you know something is wrong with those seeds. Okay? You should therefore contact the supplier and say, I planted 100 seeds, I got 0 germination. What are you prepared to do? But that's the kind of conversation you should have with the seed supplier before you buy. You can't just suddenly turn up at his shop and say, these seeds no good that you sold me. Be prepared to hand over the rest of the seeds as well, unless you want to try some more. But if the seeds are viable, they should germinate in that period of a 5-day, if that is the relevant time for those seeds. If it goes beyond 2 extra days, then something is definitely wrong. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, there's a lot of right. You hear me a little better now?
There is a situation with your sound system, James. I'll take it then. Unless Sister Gabrielle would like to butt in here with this one that I asked James to do.
Or maybe Marcia.
Marcia. Okay, Marcia, would you like to volunteer an opinion on it?
The question was potash application. No,
Yes.
she was asking about watering, if it could be watered onto the plant. There are foliar potash fertilizers. Same way you would get the Nutrex 2020. You can get foliar grade potassium fertilizers, and you just dissolve and water your plants. All right, so there's a company out, I think they call it Acalif. It's a fertilizer that I have been using, and it works well. And you get them in the same range as your starter fertilizer, your grower, and your bearer, because your potash fertilizer is basically your bearer, where you would apply that at flowering and early fruiting. So you can look for foliar fertilizers that carry the third number highest, and you can dilute it and spray it, water it onto your plants. Yeah?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for your contribution.
Okay, thank you.
Marcel, could you use the name just now? I didn't get the whole thing. Was it Casanik you said?
I think it's Acaleaf is the brand.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
All right. There are several different ones. In fact, I have one right here in my hand now. It's from a company called Carlson Chemical in Central Trinidad. I think they distribute in Rio Claro as well. And this one goes on the name Casanik, Kasanic. And it's just a couple drops in a gallon of water. But there are several, as Ms. Marcia said. So you don't need to stick to any particular brand. And I'm not trying to promote any particular brand. Even in your own neighborhood and among your people, it'll be good to develop those relationships so that sometimes you get extra advice that you may not easily find. Okay?
Can I share something? This
Sure.
is something that I would practice in my own garden. Depending on the stage of the growth of the plant, I would usually, especially in the dry season, I would usually foliar fertilize. So say for instance, I just transplanted the seedlings and I'm about to start to fertilize. I would use 1 pound of fertilizer to a barrel of water. I place the fertilizer in a piece of cloth and I submerge it in the water and I use that to water the plants. The concentration is not high, it would not burn anything, and your plant gets small amounts whenever you water. So if you're watering once a day, it gets small amount, it gets the nutrients, and it does not burn your plants. So that is something someone can use. I've been doing that for years.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Mitchell. Who is next? I think it was
Judy.
next.
Yes.
So I had one more question. Forgot to answer, please.
Jesse has one more question.
No,
Yeah.
I had one question that you had. I didn't get the answer to, please.
Which one is it? We may have missed it.
Oh, that's okay. It is if it is best to sow the seeds only in pro-mix soil or in the growing medium soil. That was the
Let me say that both would work fine. There's no need to put yourself through additional expense, except if you're doing it at a commercial level to resell. It's lighter, it's more manageable, it's easier to be able to distribute as you commercialize if it is in the peat moss. But if it's for home use, you're just as good if you use that particular soil medium mix that we were speaking of. Okay, Jesse?
Yes, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Let's go on to Judy then.
Yes, good night. I want to know what causes the pumpkin flower to cut off. I have a vine running in my yard and the flower will come up really nice and then like the next day you see it cut off. What can cause that? Also for like melangen, the flower will come out and it will drop and no fruit. And the third thing is that I wasn't able to get a snapshot of any of the charts that you had up. I don't know if it will be available. Those are my 3 questions.
Anybody want to tackle that one?
With respect to the pumpkin, it may very well be an insect that working during the night, and it will hit the flower even at the point where it joins. So next day you see a whole flower on the ground. So you'll probably need to check during the evening, late evening, to see if you've seen any insects, number of insects crawling around, because that might be an insect. With respect to the melangen, there's something called a midge. That's a very tiny insect. And that midge will have your melangen not flowering. It gets inside, even into the flower itself at the early stages. And so it's a difficult thing to control. Because if you use what is called systemic insecticides, which are insecticides the plant will absorb and then poison the sap. And when the insect sucks the sap, it kills the insect. It really is not the easiest thing to control. And melangen is famous for giving you that problem. Your best bet is to start off with as insect-free and as pest-free a seedling as possible, and keep your field weed-free. Because if the field is weed-free, if your plant is very healthy on transplanting, healthy plants tend to fight off pest and disease attacks better.
Okay, thank you. And would I be able to get back the charts that you had up, sir?
Yes, I will try to see how we can distribute that for all of you. Let me just add to a wonderful answer, James. I like that response. The midges don't live in the crop per se. They like to go down in the leaf litter. That's where they live. That's where they breed. And they will stay there for their whole life cycle and continue. So as clean as your field could be, it will be very useful in keeping away the midges from attacking the flowers. Some midges are useful, but most midges are not. So you want to get rid of the midges. Yep. Other than that, it's really highly toxic chemicals you're going to be spraying on these plants. All right, next.
Yurka?
Yes, good evening, Brother Leon. What I wanted to find out is whether or not you'll be giving us some tips on container planting.
Okay, we're going to spend a whole session doing container planting. Yes, grow box and container planting.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next person.
I'm not seeing any hand raised, but if
Okay,
anyone...
you have any written questions, Sister Gabriel? If not, proceed with the formation of the groups that we discussed.
Someone said though.
Just prior to Gabby, let me just add a little something to what was said about people being able to identify when they waited long enough for germination. If you're selecting your own seeds from a previous crop, or if you got seeds from some friend or somebody, what you could do prior to planting out your seeds is to do what is called pre-germination. That means you take some seeds and you put them in a container with a piece of tissue paper, water it lightly. You don't want to soak the seed too much. Water it lightly and allow for the seed to absorb the water. And in that period, you're going to determine whether you're seeing germination taking place or not. Some seeds like okra and sorrel will appear to not germinate because the seed coats are very leathery. And so what you should do with those is pre-soak them before you plant them. But like Mr. Granger said before, do not pre-soak or wet too much too long prior to planting, because what you will do is start the germination process. And if you're not planting it out, you put it back in storage, the plant will germinate and you would not be able to get the benefit of a germinated seedling when you put it out. So pre-germination gives you an idea, number one, that the plant is germinating, but it also indicates the percentage of germination you will get. When you buy a seedling in a pack that is taken from another container, you do have the benefit of the information that the container has. And you don't know how long they package the seeds. So they may tell you it's good seeds, but the expiry date, and most times when they're selling seeds, they sell it close to the expiry date. When you buy it 2 months after they package it and the expiry date has gone, you're playing Russian roulette with the kind of germination you will get. So if you're buying packet seeds, rather than do all the work and then realize that the seeds are not germinating, well, do a pre-germination. One good thing to give you a percentage is probably put out about 20 seeds and multiply that among that germinated by 5, you will know how much out of 100, and that gives you the percentage.
Well said. Well said. Useful tip. Very useful tip there.
Brittany had her hand up. She also wrote a question, but Brittany, you could go ahead and ask your question.
Good night, everyone. My question is, I heard cow manure and chicken manure mentioned, but is goat manure good for plants?
Yes,
In
it's actually
particular,
very good. Some of the
ginger?
best crops I've seen growing in my backyard came from goat manure. Yes, goat manure is also highly recommended. Just be aware that whatever manure you use and you want it to be cured. You don't want to burn the plant, so you want to make sure it's well cured. Goat manure tend to have a little higher urine content in it than cow manure. And therefore it is essential to make sure it's well cured. Chicken manure has the highest content of urea though, and you should never use chicken manure fresh. Be aware that if they invite you to take from the litter from their pens, that they didn't spray on diesel. Sometimes they spray diesel to avoid the amount of flies that would visit, and know it must be properly cured. You could ask them, did you spray with diesel? Because you want to avoid taking manure that has been sprayed with diesel. Yeah?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Elsa, Sister Elsa, you can go ahead.
Good night, everyone. My question, Brother Granger, is how would you know when the manure, like the cow manure or the chicken manure, is properly cured?
Okay. Properly cured manure crumbles easily and looks almost like the texture of a good soil. If it is clumping, it did not get a chance to cure. Even if it is dry, it should not be clumping. What happens when it goes through that phase of curing, the temperature goes up and dangerous organisms in the manure would be killed with that high temperature. So the temperature goes up, and after a period of time, the temperature will begin to come down. All the organisms have died, and the curing process takes place. It isn't heavily burdened with so much nitrogen anymore. Some will be driven off, and so on. And those are the things that will cause the plants to burn. So if it is still clumping, even though it is dry, you can take the chance to put your hand and take up a clump. And if it doesn't crumble easily, it's not cured. For those who are accustomed looking at manure, the moment you see it, you will know. So if you're not accustomed to it, ask a friend who knows about the manure to tell you about it. Okay? If, for instance, you see a lot of grassy material in it and the grass doesn't look like it has been broken down, know that is not cured manure, because the animal manure waste get inevitably mixed with some forage they would have been eating, some pasture grass. And therefore, if that grass is very evident and looks like it's not broken down, you know it's not cured manure. That's one telltale sign. Yeah.
We have a question from Suzette. Unmute your mic and ask your question.
Good night, everyone. My question is, one, how do you treat fungus soil? And how do you treat, well, fungus and mold, or how do you treat a plant that has fungus or mold?
If you want to stay away from highly toxic chemicals, I recommend one of the cheapest copper fungicides you could get on the market. Copper kills fungus. So if it is absolutely necessary to spray a fungicide, use one of the ordinary cheapest copper fungicide. You have some very complicated ones that are more toxic and more expensive. Normally, signs of fungus in your beds would be too much watering, not enough sunlight, overcrowding, that kind of thing. So you have to remove elements that inducing the fungal growth. That is as far as I'm prepared to address it, unless an officer visits you and see your particular condition, or you take pictures and share with us so we could share more information. Outside of that, I'll be really guessing and giving an overkill.
Right, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so is that it for questions, Brother Leon? Yes, okay. So I tried, from what Brother Leon asked me to do, to separate the group into groups so that we can do the seedling production of the different vegetables that he suggested. Now, this is based on who I know, where who I know live. All right, so some persons I wasn't able to put you in a group, but you can let me know where you can operate. So from the Princeton area, I have about 22 persons, so I have 2 groups of 11. From the Rio Claro area, I have about Rio Claro Miao, about 14 persons, so I have 2 groups of 7. And then the other persons live outside of these areas, so it's a little difficult to put you all together to work. All right, so I just had the names written and I made the groups based on the order I had the list, all right? So the first group for the Princeton area, I'm asking Renata Francis to lead this group. And the members are Renata Francis, Eureka Griffith, Rona Ferguson, Elsa, Sergio, Marlon, Marshall, Raquel Jones, Kafensi Jones, Jenny Lynch, Avian Semper, Precious Francis, and Marva Teasdale. The second group for Princeton, I have Anastasia Molino, Yvonne Williams, Gayleen Phillip, Intikar Hassan, Debbie Ramdat, Ava Haynes, Brent Alexander, and I'm asking our pastor, Vaughn Joshua, to lead that group. Oh, and Yvette Francis. I'm asking Vaughn Joshua to lead that group. So those are the 2 groups for the Princeton area. I will send the leader of the group the names of all the persons, and if you don't have their numbers, I'll send you their numbers. For the Rio Claro area, the first group, I'm asking Vinton Stephen to lead that group, and the members are Carol Jeffrey, Kay Gary, Deanne Thomas, Reynold Gary, Brian Phillip, and Brian Phillip. The second group, the persons are Margaret Gary, David Julian, Andy Paul, I'm asking Andy to lead that group, Fran Andrews, Wyndon McKnight, Louis Johnson, Brittany Pacheco Carrera, and Daria Bradshaw. So those are the 4 groups that I was able to form. The other persons live outside of these areas, and it's a little difficult to put them into a group to operate. So I seek your advice on how we get them to do the assignment. You're muted.
Okay, as we did with the group that is now graduating tonight, I want to encourage that we form a specific chat group. We label this one relevant to the group. I want to also go further to say, and you will guide me, and I'll be guided by what the members think. We should form also a Facebook group if that is also convenient and is going to help the group to grow. I think a Facebook chat group should help us, but we should start with the telephone, the WhatsApp chat group.
Yes.
Sometimes a little difficult to sift everything there. I also will give the assignments, and you can email your responses to the assignment. The email address I'm using is royalhealth12, ROYAL. I should write it on royalhealth12 at gmail.com. I was using my Leon Granger at gmail.com, but that got too filled up and it's asking me to buy space. Royal Health 12 at gmail.com. Okay, that's it on the screen. I recommend that you send your assignments to that email address, but let the group dynamics play out its part on the group chat, on the WhatsApp group chat. Okay, for those who are graduating tonight, Sister Roxanne, I tried to say Roxanne and Rolex came out my mouth. Sister Roxanne of the Stanmore Avenue Church is arranging for your graduation and for your collection of certificates that will be signed by conference and by Stanmore Avenue pastor. I want to think that a similar one will be done for this group. For you to qualify to get your certificate of participation, you must be at all of the 4 lectures and participate by responding with the assignments and asking questions on the chat group. Relevant questions. We will try our best to give you information suitable to the range of crops we are handling and the topics. All right. Be aware that you could always visit your agriculture office in your county. They are extremely helpful, very talented, with lots of information. I will also gather information and put on the site or email to you as required. Just, I hope your email address could take the files. If you go to agriculture.gov.tt, your website, the local Ministry of Agriculture has lots of information on crops. And I've been pulling from there. Sometimes we find it's not so user friendly. So I pull from there and I'll send to you. I hope that you make use of it. All right, you've been a wonderful group. And for those graduating, this is probably your last opportunity, but I wouldn't say it's the last. We leave the chat alive, Sister Gabrielle, Sister Roxanne. We will leave the chat group alive for some time again. I don't know if for a month or 2 months or until the end of this year. So if you have a burning question or you have a picture of something you want to show us that's happening on your field, feel free to share and I'll be happy to answer your query, as well as get help from some of the officers who are so well trained and ready and able to share their own expertise. Thank you very much, Sister Gabrielle. Thanks to all of you who attended tonight, and congratulations to the 35 or so that will be graduating from the East-West corridor.
Just before we leave, back to the groups. For the group from Princeton that's being led by Sister Renata. So your seeds will be tomatoes. For the group led by Pastor Joshua, your seeds will be lettuce. For the Rio Claro area, the group led by Vinton, we're asking you to do pak choy. And for the group led by Andy, we're asking you to do pimento. So I will send the names, like I said, to the various leaders and they will contact you and you will make your arrangement. I'll ask Brother Granger to just one more time say exactly what he wants you all to do. As well as you heard him talk about a WhatsApp group, the group that is graduating, they have a WhatsApp group. I'm going to develop one now for us. And like he said, you can ask anything and ask him any question on that group in between classes and you can get answers to any concerns you have. Okay, so Brother Granger, can you just repeat what they are required to do and by when?
Okay, so we know that when you buy a pack of seeds, you may have 100, you may have 500 seeds, 1,000. It will be too much for you to manage. And that's why we formed you into a group, hopefully of 10. So encourage others to join your group. Those who did not come on tonight, I would probably do a repeat class for them so that they could catch up. But don't wait too late to do that so that they can catch up before the weekend is over, maybe Saturday night. And the seed, the crop that you are assigned, let's say it's tomatoes and you bought a pack of tomato seeds, among the group, it's 10 of you and the seeds cost $100, then you can put up $10 each and buy the seeds. When you plant it and you end up with 100 plants, if there are hundreds of you or whatever number, you can now share as well as exchange. So someone will give you some pimento plants and you will give them some tomato plants. So that you don't have to buy, one group don't have to buy lettuce, patch, or tomato and pimento. Each group will have a different one and then you share among yourselves. Make sure you record what you do, how many seeds, how many plants, how many germinated, how many days it took. Do your record, keep it. And ultimately, who you give it to. Arrange your own collection. I'm not going to get involved in that. Sister Gabrielle is not going to get involved in that. We want the group dynamics to play out. We want the community interaction to take place. We want you to remember the 4 W's. Is it 4 W's or 3 W's? Wash your hands, wear your mask, And remember the social distancing. All protocols observed, we should get this program moving smoothly and at best economical for you to be able to plan something. Okay.
Brother Leon, this session was recorded, so anyone who missed it, we can send it for them. So maybe you may not have to repeat because they can have access to the recording.
So it will be posted on YouTube, right?
Yes, I guess Pastor Joshua.
Excellent. That's the way to do it, because sending that forward on a Google Doc, it's difficult and most people may not have the equipment to open. Yes, that's beautiful.
So we take your advice. I'll discuss it with Pastor Joshua. One suggestion has made in the comments. The group is for agriculture questions and answers and pictures. So if we could minimize or even eliminate the good mornings and the other things that does not relate to the group, because sometimes those things crowd people's phones. So thank you so much for abiding by that. By tomorrow, for the latest, you will get notice of the group. So as we close, thanks again, Brother Granger. We look forward to seeing all of you and maybe more of your friends next Thursday evening at 6. And as we close, I want to ask Brother Vinton Stephen from the Rio Claro area to close us in prayer.
Okay, let's go ahead. Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity that we've had this evening to learn more in a way of improving ourselves and others. We thank you for the presenter and those who were instrumental in the arrangement of this program. We trust that we take it seriously and enjoy it as we participate. And now as we depart from this session, we want to ask your Holy Spirit guidance with us. And may you continue to bless us, help us to remember what we have learned and really go forward doing them. Let us be practical people in our future. Thank you, and God bless everyone. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Have a good night.
Amen. You may open your mics and say hello to each other before you go.
Hello.